that scene in Mean Girls when they say, raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by Regina George? Well, change that with your employer. Come on, raise your hand. Hey there, I'm Mercedes. Welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm an executive recruiter and a career coach, and my entire thing is helping Black professionals with my knowledge and ensuring that they have meaningful success in their careers. In this video, I'm actually going to be sharing some tips and strategies and mindset shifts that are really going to be helpful for you if you plan on leaving your toxic workplace or your toxic job in the next couple of months. I'm going to share a couple of stories about me and my own workplace traumas that I've had to endure, and so they help me, so I really hope that they'll help you as well. I also want to really remind you that if you are having a really hard time or you're dealing with stress or anxieties about toxic workplaces, then I really encourage you to really explore the idea of whether or not therapy would be something that's helpful for you. I have done it in my career in relation to workplace stress, and so it's something that I would really recommend. And hang on to the end if this is a good video for you, because I'm going to share with you all of these tips as well as the number one or my biggest tip or mindset shift that really helped me during my most recent job search. So let's get into it. Okay, so number one is if you're in a toxic workplace, you have a toxic employer, the first thing that you have to realize is that not all employers are the same. There are not all toxic, and there's certainly better out there for you. So a lot of the time, honestly, I see job seekers, especially if they're just staying or they feel like they're stuck in their job or there's not other options for them, they often put their job search on hold or pause, or they go really slow and really don't spend the time and energy that's needed on their job search because they don't really think that there's better out there, or they don't think that they can get better. So if that's where your mindset is, I just want to let you know that there are positive and work environments that you can work in. I work in them now. I work in one of them now. There are employers out there that will allow for flexible shifts or schedules that really may help you. And for those of you who are like, I won't find better coworkers, what about my friends? Just really you will continue to build positive relationships wherever you go if you make sure that you pick the right employer for you. So I just want you to kind of lean into that, even if you feel uncomfortable, to say, you know what, I'm going to just find out if there's something out there that's better for me, and just really embrace it and launch your job search. So number two is really more of a mindset shift. So again, if you work in a toxic employer, toxic workplace, then honestly, stop thinking that your loyalty is eventually going to be rewarded. Because the fact of the matter is, if an employer does not value enough to treat you well or create a positive workplace for you, they also won't value enough to make sure that you're well paid, that you're promoted, and that you reach other things from a professional development or even personal development standpoint that's going to help you. So they will not invest in you, essentially. So don't feel like you're invested in this employer more than they're invested in you. You can't feel any loyalty towards your duties or your boss or even your coworkers. You ultimately always have to come first, because that's ultimately, you're the only person responsible for you, and they're not going to extend you that same type of loyalty, again, if they're not valuing you in your role. So just to kind of explain, I did say that I was going to share some personal examples out of my career. So if you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard my story where I said that I submitted a case for a raise. I had started there as an intern. I really had just worked my way up and just really learned so much. And then also when I was really in that place where I had learned so much, I was able to really take on projects, really oversee a lot of transformational changes, and just do a lot of great work. And so I really felt like that case was a strong case, and also that I wasn't really asking for, in terms of the types of responsibilities that I had, the highest level of salary for that would be warranted. And so I ended up submitting that case. I even waited till the regular review of raises and salaries that came every single year, and at the end of the day, that ended up getting denied. Long story short, I had a little bit of a hissy fit and I ended up getting my raise anyway, but I knew at that time it really wasn't a place that I was going to be long term, because that really felt like a betrayal for me for as hard as I worked. And that was a moment that I truly understood that I have to really look out for myself because I wasn't in a place where I was valued as much for as much value as I was providing. So just really keep that in mind as you think about that. And think about how much value am I, even though I'm putting in so much value, how much value is going to be returned to me in terms of upward mobility. And if you're working in a toxic workplace, you're not happy, they don't value you, you're probably not going to get there. Number 3 is also a toxic mindset that comes from a toxic employer. And so I guess I want you to know that your self-worth is not defined by how they treat you. And so I guess the best way to think about this is like, right, you may not feel like you have the right skills or enough experience, or you don't provide value because they haven't recognized you for the work that you've done. And just because they have failed to do that does not mean that you don't provide value. It doesn't mean that you couldn't do great work at another employer. And oftentimes where we don't feel like we have enough experience is actually our employers holding us back, because it's actually to their advantage not to recognize those things, because you may still settle for less pay. You may settle for not getting a promotion. You may settle for not being treated well. Like, let's talk about just being human, like human decency here. And so I told you about all of that experience that I had where I was moving up through that company, but I really wasn't paid what I should be. Looking back at it, I probably wasn't even in the right title for the amount of work that I was doing. And honestly, I had so much fear when I was getting ready to leave, because I really felt like I was just, I was so ingrained in this company. This was the only experience that I had. And so I had a lot of doubts about whether or not my skills or knowledge or the value that I could provide could be replicated elsewhere. And so I really had to take a lot of time to really just say, no, I have this knowledge, I have these abilities, I have these strengths, and that's the way that I can add value to my next employer. So I want you to consider that as well, especially if you're not feeling confident in your job search. Number 4, distance yourself from the outcomes in your current position. I know this is so hard because in my role, I cared a lot. Like, I was in human resources, of course, so I really wanted to make sure that everyone is taken care of. I felt a lot of ownership over the roles and what I was accountable for. And so I always wanted to make sure that every project was done, everything was done to perfection, and that I was completing things on time. But essentially that was never possible for me because honestly, I was really doing the work of like 2 or 3 people. It was insane the amount of things I thought about later about this. But honestly, I was expected to do all of the work and for all of it to be done. And I also held myself to that standard because I thought this was okay or normal. And so I guess what I want to encourage you to do or to think about is that remember to put yourself first. The only way that you can actually leave this toxic situation, this toxic environment, is so that you can conduct a job search. And so you have to make sure that you're in the right headspace to do that. And if you're putting your all into work, it just can't happen. So I don't mean to just say whatever to your duties, right? You're probably going to be out of a job before you get another job. So I'm not telling you that. But I want you to really cut back. Like if you don't have any boundaries around your lunch, if you don't leave until 3 hours after everybody else, if you're putting in more effort or you're really taking up the work for other people, set your boundaries and cut back on those things so that you can mind your energy and your mental health so you can go home and put in the same amount of energy and work that you do at work into your job search as well. So keep that in mind. Okay. Toxic thing to avoid, number 5. I don't really think this is a mindset shift, but this is just a be careful, be aware, and be mindful of everything in your job search. So one thing I'd never want you to do is to leave one toxic job and go to another. So don't be so ready to leave, so done with it, just so tired and exhausted and everything else that you just jump ship and just go right to another toxic job because you were so desperate to leave or you didn't really pick up on the red flags or anything like that. I actually have another video that shares things about toxic employer red flags in the interview process. So check out that video if you're not sure what those are. But I honestly almost had an example of this. I was so desperate to leave. And so I ended up interviewing with another company. They were going through a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and I asked questions about, what their HR team was like. And they said they had like all of these employees, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees, but they only had like 2 HR people. And so HR people know there's generally like 1 HR person to 100 employees. And so I knew at face value that did not sound right, and that I was probably going to put myself in a similar situation if I went there. But I was so desperate to leave, just so ready to go, that I actually interviewed with them. And I'm not proud of this, don't tell anybody, but I actually ended up ghosting them, and I just like didn't respond to inquiries about future interviews because I knew that I really shouldn't be interviewing. And then I ended up interviewing, and then that was just like a really big sign that that position was not for me, because they ended up interviewing me for a position that was not the one that I applied for. So all of that to say, like, really be aware of what comes up when you're interviewing, what comes up when you read a position description, and like read into those. So don't do what I do. Don't ghost. Don't interview for jobs that you think probably aren't it. But yes, really pay attention. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the video. I promised you that I was going to share one mindset shift that really helped me in my career, and also that I share with my coaching clients, is especially when, any job search in general, but especially ones where you were in a toxic workplace, because toxic workplaces, they stress you out, they give you anxiety, you might be fearful about, what's happening or what's going on, or whether your job's secure. And you also may just be flat out burnt out because just everything that's going on, right? It's just a lot. And so, like I said, that was true for me when I was ready to leave. And so one of the things that was hard for me was time and energy outside of work. So what you need to do is make sure that the efforts that you take and dedicate towards your job search, that you pace yourself. And so I want you to take your time identifying positions that are really of interest to you, and applying to less positions, but spending more time on your applications and tailoring your resume and doing some research so that you can tailor your cover letter. So instead of these, and I know, there's a lot of people that I talk to and they're like, I applied to 2,000 jobs. Please don't apply to 2,000 jobs. Just really pace yourself, identify a couple of jobs, even just every 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be a lot. It's less is more in this case, because when you're able to do that, you have more quality applications, you get more interviews, and therefore you have you're more likely to be offered, because you've spent more time, quality time, and tailoring and preparing yourself for these. So that's really the bonus content. Just make sure that you pace yourself, so that you're prepared and that you perform well in the process. So my question for you is, you're watching this video probably because if you haven't launched your job search just yet, you're probably really thinking about it because you're not in a good place. So I'm kind of just curious from you, what do you think is going to be most challenging about this process? Is it going to be actually taking the step and deciding to leave your job? Or is it going to be conducting your job search? Just let me know in the comments what's going to be the hardest part for you. For those of you out there that are like, this sounds great, Mercedes, but I just, the whole job search thing, it just stresses me out. I don't know what to do. I always feel overwhelmed. I always feel frustrated. I really want to invite you to join the Black Professionals Academy. It's actually an academy that I put together for Black professionals, really to help guide them through this entire process. So I've created a lot of training videos. I've created templates and strategies, and you also get access to group coaching so that you can feel really prepared, and also you have a guide as you move through this process, through your job search, so that you don't have all of the questions that most people really face, that you have a clear strategy, and ultimately that you'll be in a place to really leave your job, your current job, for your dream job in 3 to 6 months. So I will actually put a link below to a link that allows you to join the Black Professionals Academy, and I'll see you there. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to leave them below. My closing statement to you is Just stay strong, boo. Like, it's rough. I've been there when I just really had to leave. And so I know it's not an easy thing, but just kind of lean into some of these tips, and I'm sure that you'll be transitioning out pretty soon, especially if you join the academy. Okay, so if you like this video, make sure that you subscribe and tap the bell so you get notified of new videos. If you found this video, I would really appreciate if you share this video, or at the very least liked it. It really helps me get exposure and helps other Black professionals find this video so that they can also use these tips to help them grow in their career. So I'll see you in the next video. Good night. Is it night where you are? Probably not. Okay, bye.